recently, my best friend in the entire world, who I've known for 20 some odd years, started a Facebook page called Eat, Swap, Love. And it's a bunch of her friends and me. She lives in New Jersey, so we don't see each other, but we talk at least once a week, if not more often. Anyway, she started this Facebook page, and one of the recipes that it's a bunch of sharing of recipes between different households. And one of the ones that she shared with me is a butternut squash macaroni and cheese. If anybody knows me, you know I'm constantly trying to find ways to force my children to eat vegetables. Because while we eat a lot of chocolate, vegetables are like I don't know, it's my mantra to make them eat them, and they don't like them. So I found this recipe, or she sent me this recipe, I made it. I did not tell my children there was butternut squash in it. I just gave them the macaroni and cheese. And my older son looked up and said, "Mom, this is the best macaroni and cheese you have ever made." And I went, score! Because he's eating vegetables and he doesn't know it. So I decided to share the recipe with you. So I have a whole squash. I'm going to do it two ways. But first we got to peel it. And that consists of just getting past the skin. And you don't want to stop at this light yellowish orange. You want to get to the dark orange center. And I called my best friend after I made it, and I said, well, I texted her and I said, so I know you told me to make this because my kids would love it, but I don't want to share. And she scoldingly told me to go give my children macaroni and cheese. Because that's what your best friend does, right? She tells you when you're being selfish. But it was so good that I just didn't want to share it. And I had already decided that if they didn't like it, I would just eat their bowls. And I normally don't eat after my children because I think it's gross. But I was willing to sacrifice on this one. That's how good this macaroni and cheese was. So the original recipe that she sent me had some things in it I did not have, like fresh thyme. I just omitted that. It had onion that you microplane right into your saucepan. And I don't know if I've explained to you how my family feels about onions. They are not fans. I can get away with onion powder occasionally. I cannot get away with onions. No matter how small I dice them, it's like he knows they're in there. And then they just refuse to eat them. Alright, so once it is peeled, you're going to get rid of all of the peel. And then we're going to start cutting. Okay, so first step is to cut that bulbous part off. And then I'm going to cut the end off. Slice it down the middle. And then we are going to take all of these seeds out because we don't want the seeds. So similar to the way you would de-seed a pumpkin, you're just going to get a spoon in there. And make a giant mess. So you're going to scoop that whole membrane out. There's one half. All right. Now we're going to clean up our seeds, and then we're going to start cutting. Okay, so all I want to do with this bottom part of the squash is to cube it, because we're going to boil it. And to my mother-in-law, if you're watching this, I went to get my cutting glove. Your son borrowed it, and I have not seen it since. So, I'm going to go on a hunt. But I just want you to know, I know you bought me the cutting glove. Now that our butternut squash is cubed, we are going to head over to the stove. Okay, so I have a pot of water that is boiling with about a tablespoon of salt, because you need something to flavor the water. So all I'm going to do is drop butternut squash right in, put the lid back on, and this needs to boil for about 30 minutes. It needs to get really soft and tender because it's going to peel apart, and then we're going to use the immersion blender to add it to the sauce so that no one can tell there's butternut squash in there. There's no chunks, there's no pieces, it is all a smooth sauce. So it's been about 40 minutes. I gave it just a little extra time. And if you've ever made mashed potatoes, the way to check to make sure that they're ready is to stick a fork in it, and if it goes right through, they're ready. So that's all I've done with this. It's very soft and tender, and you see how it's breaking apart around the fork. It means it's ready. So I'm going to take the squash and pour it into a bowl and set it aside. And then we're going to put this pan back in, and we're going to boil our pasta. So you need about a pound of pasta, or 4 cups. So I'm going to cook the pasta in the same water that I cooked the squash in. That way it gets the same flavor. Just going to pour that in. And while that is cooking, we are going to work on the sauce. I'm going to step right over here. Turn my saucepan on medium. Okay, I have 2 tablespoons of butter and a tablespoon of olive oil, and we're going to melt those together. So now that the butter is almost melted, I have a teaspoon of minced garlic. I'm going to add, I have 2 teaspoons of onion powder. And 2 teaspoons of dried sage. So we're going to break up the onion powder. And let the garlic cook for a little bit. Mainly because I want it to cook down. Biting into a piece of garlic is never a fun option. Alright, now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of flour. And this is going to create a roux, or a thickening for the rest of your sauce. A roux is basically 3 parts fat and 3 parts flour. So it doesn't matter what what fat you use. You can use all butter. We tried to make it a little healthier by adding olive oil. So there is your roux. Now, we're going to add 2 cups of chicken stock. And the way that roux is all clumped up, now what we want to do is break it apart in our chicken stock. We're going to bring the chicken stock to a boil. I'm going to turn the water down on the pasta because if you can't see, it's overflowing. So I'm going to bring this chicken stock to a boil and then we'll add our butternut squash. So bubbles are starting to form in our chicken stock. Now we are going to add that butternut squash. I'm going to stir it around. And then break out one of my favorite kitchen tools. And that is my immersion blender. Now if you don't have one, you can stick this whole thing in a food processor to get it all one consistency, or you can just use a potato masher and mash it. But I'm going okay, that's with the immersion blender. Now, if you do not have one, potato masher works just as well. See how you break up all the pieces? So once this is smooth, which it appears to be, we are going to add a cup of half and half. Now you can use heavy cream if you want. I happen to have bought too much half and half, and I keep trying to find something to use it with. And this is finally the end of our half and half, so I created a giant space in our refrigerator, which makes everyone in the house happy. Alright, so now we're going to bring this back to a boil, and then add our cheese. And this should take about a minute or two, not much longer than that, to get to a boil. And adding the cream also helps me find pieces that I didn't get mashed. I think there was one right there. There we are. Now we'll wait to bring it to a boil, and then we'll I have 2 cups of cheddar cheese and a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. We've got bubbles forming, so it's time to add our cheese. I'm going to start with my 2 cups of shredded cheddar. I use mild cheddar. Feel free to use sharp if that's what makes you happy. The cheddar. Now I have, this is 2/3 cup of Parmesan. The recipe only calls for a half of a cup, but we like cheese, so I always like to give a little more. Then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of white pepper. And I use white pepper because my children don't know it's there. They tend to bite into black pepper and then have a fit. So I use the white pepper, and you need about half as much of white pepper as you do black pepper, just in case you decide to make the switch. Then I have a 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And a teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to let this all cook, and and then check on our pasta. As soon as our pasta is al dente, which means little firm, not mushy yet, we're going to move one from here to there. Oh, it's ready. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. The gloves out. All right. Drain the pasta. And then pour it right into your sauce. And I turned the burner down to low because I don't want the cheese to start burning at the bottom of the pan. So we're just going to stir the pasta in. And we're ready to serve. And there you have butternut squash, macaroni and cheese that your children will eat, and they'll get an extra serving of vegetables.